Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, welcome back to the committee. I'm going to talk a little bit about a subject on which you and I disagree, which won't surprise you. But I think it's important that we have a candid conversation about the tax reform of 2017 and the danger that that I associate with the administration's attempt to really throw it out. And let me just remind my colleagues, these are objective facts. In the wake of the tax reform of 2017, take 2019, the first year for which it was fully implemented, we had the best economy of my lifetime. The lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, more job openings than people looking for jobs, record low poverty, median household income at an all-time high, strong wage growth, and this is important. The wage growth was faster than the rate of inflation. So American workers were becoming more affluent. They were able to improve their standard of living, contrary to today, where the wage growth is not keeping up with inflation. And so today's workers are falling further and further behind under the current economic circumstances. But getting back to post-tax reform, corporate inversions had stopped entirely. It wasn't that they slowed down. We haven't been able to identify a single corporate inversion since our tax reform, which was designed in part to stop corporate inversions, went into effect. There's also the shift in the tax burden, which, contrary to what some of our colleagues like to suggest, the 2017 tax reform shifted the tax burden even more to higher income people. The top 1% of wage earners paid a greater share of the total tax burden as a result of the 2017 tax reform. The bottom 50% paid a lesser percentage, and today the top 1% makes about 20% of the income in America, pays about 40% of the taxes. But what about federal tax revenue? Oh, well, that surged. And this year, looks like we're going to reach another record high. It's coming in so far this year, 22% higher than last year. And last year was a record. For this year, corporate tax revenue is on track to be at the highest level of GDP since 2015. So the statistics are unbelievable. Like, I don't know how you could even conjure up a better economic outcome than what we had right before the pandemic hit. Now, you could suggest that, oh, it's all a coincidence, that the tax reform resulted in exactly what some of us predicted and suggested might happen, which is an acceleration of investment, strong economic growth, repatriation of a huge amount of overseas money. But that's pretty improbable. The fact is, we had the best economy of my lifetime by far, and it was working best for low-income Americans, ethnic minorities who historically have not had as good an economic results as others. And so the Biden administration comes along and says, let's look at all this data and let's throw out the tax reform. It's unbelievable. But my understanding is that apparently is still on the table, out of, in part, this concern that if we don't do this two-pillar tax reform that I know you've negotiated, Madam Secretary, we have what you characterize as a race to the bottom, which to me is competition among countries to have an attractive environment for investment. Frankly, I think we should be looking to win that race, not to prevent the race from taking place. But I understand that we've got this negotiation. What we haven't seen is how this gets implemented. So, two quick questions, and then I'll let you respond. First, I'm very concerned about the impact that the proposal will have on American competitiveness. My understanding is that the Treasury Department has run an analysis, has data about the impact on American business if the tax reform that you have proposed would go forward. So I'd like to know when we can get access to that data. That's my first point. And the second is that since Pillar 1 of your two-pillar model requires modification of existing tax treaties, it seems clear to me that has to come to the Senate for ratification. I have not yet heard an agreement that that's in fact going to happen, and in the absence of that, an explanation for why, since the Constitution requires it, why it should not. And with that, I will yield to the Secretary.
Well, just very quickly, with respect to access to data, of course, the data relating to Pillar 2 is available, and that was included in the House-passed bill and scored by JCT. So I think you must be referring to Pillar 1
Right.
and the impact that that would have. And what I would say there is that it could go either way, depending on the details which have not yet been decided in the Pillar 1 negotiations. The impact on fiscal revenues will be small. Pillar 2 has a big impact. Pillar 1 will have a small impact. We're a very large market economy. We will gain revenue from our ability to tax foreign corporations that are doing business in the United States where we consume those services. We will lose some from revenue that's taxing authority that's reallocated to foreign countries. Net, it could be positive or negative depending on details that have not yet been worked out, and that's why we've not provided data. We will when those details are clearer.
And the ratification process?
And the ratification requires Congress's approval. I think there's no doubt about it, but the form that needs to take is still to be determined.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank